Data Day Wednesday with the mad scientist of data, Dean Croke. Today, we're going to talk about Canada. What? Y'all say Canucks out there? Huh? What? And we're going to talk about Canada. We're going to talk about the spot market in Canada, trans-border freight, and it's all going to be done in the next 30 minutes, y'all. To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly. So have y'all ever pretended like you were cool and then you tripped or something? That's exactly what I just exactly what I just felt happened. Where I was like, "Oh my god, this is a great intro," and I'm clicking and the button's not clicking, and I'm like, and then yeah, and then I have my screen set where when I double click it expands because I don't know, as of like December 20th, my birthday was December 9th, as of December 20th, I lost my eyesight. So now when I just like touch my mouse twice, the screen expands and it was expanded. I'm like, oh my God, where's the button? Where's the button? Where's the button? It's like one of those, yeah, man. And you bail.
Yeah.
So, anyways, welcome everybody, gentlemen.
Good morning to y'all.
Great morning this
Look
morning.
At these
Lisa,
mornings. Go slow on the mornings. Lisa's got the spot.
She's got the spot by 1 second.
1 second.
1 second.
Jeff. She got you by one.
And then Antoine came in 7 seconds later. Antoine, good morning, my friend. And then, I mean, this is just keeps going, Richard. And good morning, Dean. Data Day. Yes, Data Day. Good morning, y'all. Data
Triple
Dean.
D Day. Best day of the week.
Triple D Day. Yeah. Guys, gotta love Data Wednesday. Yeah, and we got a big one for you today, guys. We got a big one for you. Some of the mornings, that's me some mornings trying to say good morning. Trying to get it typed out as soon as possible. Yeah,
that's so funny.
Good morning to everyone. Try to speak cool and see what happens. Yeah. We've all been there, I think. You know, it's like
that's when you land. That's when you land really cool like this, and you're like, "Yeah, I meant to do that." Right?
I meant to do that. Yeah. I'm Rich Strike in this good morning order, and then we go. Good morning, Dean. So
yes,
Good
morning, Dean.
What a great morning. What a great morning. We were actually just talking about something off air, and I'm going to totally put it out there. So we're going to start doing the lane of the day. We're going to start talking data every day where we give you the biggest kind of fluctuation in a lane and help you guys see the future. It's a little tidbit that we're going to put out there, probably starting, I don't know, Dean, when are we going to start that?
Why don't we start today?
No better time than right now, brother. You know what? Go-getters. I love go-getters. Go-getters. Ryan says, good morning, champs. Best day of the week. Yes, sir, it is. Yeah. So, do you want to start with the lane of the day, Dean?
Yeah, let's start that, get the conversation going, because it links to the 425 container vessels that are parked off Shanghai and Ningbo as of yesterday morning. And yes, I counted every single one of them on a map. On marine traffic. You can all do it if you've got the patience. I might have missed a couple, but 425 is a lot of ships waiting to load or unload. Yeah. Of course, a lot of those run back and forward between Los Angeles and Seattle and the east coast of the US. Only 35 container vessels parked off Los Angeles yesterday, according to the Marine Exchange. Captain Kit Loudon sends us a weekly report. So,
Dean, can I ask you a question on that? Do you think that obviously with, there was at one point, I think 105 off LA. I think 109 was, I think, the max.
Yeah.
Do you think this Shanghai shutdown has actually eased some of that in the LA ports?
So yes, partially. Yes. Okay. But it's also seasonal, right? So so after Chinese New Year, volumes drop off typically in March and April, and then they pick up again into peak shipping season. So seasonally, yes, the lower volumes is part of it. But yes, I think some of that volume that slowed down because of this is having an effect, but it's going to get much worse. That's the reason I'm starting this conversation with the lane of the day.
Because Dean Jeff just said the same thing too, Dean.
I think this is going to be one of the biggest supply chain disruption events we've ever seen in the entire pandemic. I think this is going to be far worse than what we saw in April of 2020 when demand crashed and ocean line carriers blanked all their sailings and parked vessels. This is having a much bigger effect because we've still got supply chain shortages for parts all over the supply chain, not just trucks and trailers and things like that. So I think this is a really important data point to watch And how it's played out in trucking, and this is why the lane of the day is an important one. Los Angeles to Chicago, we've covered this on the show a few times. Los Angeles to Chicago, about 30% of all intermodal domestic boxes and 45s and 20s and 40s move on this one lane. So Los Angeles, Chicago's a big hub point for rail freight that moves to the East Coast because it's cheaper to run it into Los Angeles than it is around to Savannah. All the logistical costs there. So
it's a big hub for Canadian, U.S. companies distributing freight into Canada. Huge.
My large customer, our stuff going to Puerto Rico was going that lane.
Got it. And it's also connects to Mexico. So it's a major train line, auto parts lane down through there. So it's an important hub, and that's why it's going to have it's had a big impact on truckload rates in the last year, because as those surging volumes came in from Asia last year, the freight networks in and around Los Angeles couldn't handle the volume, so it flowed over to the truckload spot market. And that's why our volumes tripled between Los Angeles and Chicago on truck. Because trains have fixed networks, it's very hard for them to move their capacity around. It takes time to position a container or a flat car or a well car. Trucks are much more nimble. So what I saw, and I think the same thing will play this year, and this is an important data point, you are going to see truckload volumes tied very closely to import volumes at ports this year. So as they drop, truckload volumes drop, rates drop. As the vessels start bunching, the volume starts surging, it flows over to truckload, spot rates go up. So what's happening in Los Angeles today is absolutely staggering, to the point where we've gone from 109 vessels waiting on the 9th of January down to 35 today. And remember, in normal times, pre-pandemic times, you might only have 1 or 2 vessels waiting. We've got 35 today, so it's still a pretty big deal. We thought 40 was bad a year ago. So
yeah.
How it's playing out is on that one lane, in terms of the lane of the day, this is a really important data point for everyone.
So we're talking LAX to Chicago for everybody out there.
This is long haul truck. So if you said what lane do truckload carriers and intermodal carriers compete the most, it would be this lane, because it's the highest volume lane. So on truckload, after being as high as $3.29, excluding fuel last December, spot rates from Los Angeles to Chicago for dry van have dropped 51% since December. It's only May, but they've dropped 51% to just $1.62 per mile. They are now 79 cents a mile lower than this time last year. So if you think about capacity loosening and import volumes dropping and network fluidity increasing as capacity comes back to the market, so we've seen rates drop on this really big intermodal lane. And I think this links back to Shanghai, right? Because we get about half of our import containers every month from China, about 46% in April. And and Ningbo and Shanghai, where all these vessels are the number 1 and 3 ports in China. So this is why when those ships start moving, you're going to see a lot of volume hit all of those ports. You're going to have your same bed sheet example again, trying to get to Orlando, and you're running 40-foot containers on teams and paying $10,000 a box. So when that happens, what you're going to see is all of these supply chain lines built around these intermodal networks will be flooded with volume. And of course, trucks. Our customers are trying to get in fall and holiday season volume now. So that's why the air freight's going to be tight. If you can get an air freighter in and out of China, of course, but air freight rates are going to be high, because what happens when the ocean capacity gets tight, people look for other avenues. And I think air freighters will be one where you'll have to resort to that also later in the year as we get closer to the big seasons.
And then there's also the flip side of that, Dean, where even if like any customers you have in California, even if it's not necessarily going to Chicago, rates are going to go up. They're going to go up to Canada. They're going to go up to Miami, which is, I think so it's LA, Chicago, number 1. I think isn't it LA, Miami, or LA, Florida, or Tennessee area, where the hub of all the warehouses is kind of number 2 in the North America. Right. So all those lanes are going to go up as well, because you're going to have to compete for trucks with a dollar value. Anyone that has freight or delivers freight for a customer going to California, pay very close attention, because I can almost guarantee those spot rates are going to plummet. We saw it in Texas. when Texas started having this massive increase from all the ships being offloaded,
Right.
rates going to Texas plummeted. I mean, I know many clients of mine
Right.
in a week, they lost hundreds of loads
Right.
because the customer just said, well, spot market is like 60 cents a mile cheaper. We got to explore it. So there's like, you know, the what are they? I'm trying to think in the Matrix what he said when with every action, and there's an equal or
greater
reaction, right? So it's like the big freight coming out when all the container ships hit. So we're going to be back up into that chaos in California, back up into the dray chaos, back up. Not only that, so you mentioned those bed sheets, Dean. One thing that I can say when we were looking for this to get them into CVS, the biggest thing that I thought was such a scam is warehouses in California were almost tripling what they would normally charge to unload and load into a truck because we couldn't use the container, because by the time we got to and back with your 48 hours they give you for the container, the demurrage charges would have been insane. So we had to actually transfer it to a car. And I mean, it was like $16 a pallet. It was like $8 to shrink wrap. It was like $1.27 a carton. When it was, normally your shrink wrap would be $3. You'd normally be, I mean, pallets kind of when COVID hit did spike a little bit, but call it $8 for a pallet, not 16. Like when I looked at the invoice from, and I won't mention the company name in California, but I was shocked. And I actually called the person and said, really, like, I know warehousing, you've doubled and tripled some of your costs here. Like, I get it. It's supply and demand, but that's robbery.
Come on.
Like it's robbery.
So Dan, one of the highlights of last year's freight market was about double the volume on our load boards. So you say, why is there that urgency? Well, it was part loads, it was LTL, it was tight capacity. Shippers and brokers were grabbing any truck they could to move anything they could. There was a lot of urgency late last year because remember, we were all worried about having Christmas presents to buy for our kids.
So I know lots of people that had truckloads and broke them into 3 different loads just because LTL carriers were more available than truckload carriers.
As fuel's gone up, right? Shipping transporters shippers are trying to reduce their transportation costs. You've got a lot more consolidation now, so people are much more concerned about that. So, but I think the biggest story, and this is why it's going to get so complex for everybody that's in the intermediary space. Diesel's just gone up again, right? $5.63. Jeff just made a point about it in the comment section a little while ago. But on top of all of this, we have diesel prices at record high levels. And folks, spot rates dropped again this week. So as of this morning, spot rates in dry van were down 6 cents a mile again this week. Reefer rates are down 12 cents a mile. So for context, dry van rates are now just under $2 a mile. That's the national average.
And that's with fuel or without fuel?
It's without. So that's the line haul rate without fuel. I try to strip out fuel because it's such a variable. It kind of disguises what the underlying base rate is. Yeah. But we are, this is, for a lot of carriers, this is perilous territory. And why I say, intermediaries have got to watch it, because a lot of this capacity that was around last year might not make it. And then you're going to be back to scrambling to find trucks to move things again. So I've never seen fuel go up as much as it's gone up and rates go down as much as they've gone down at the same time. And we talk about this a lot on the show here, but operating costs, and I'll give you the numbers. So this is kind of the worst case scenario, right? This is a owner operator, 100,000 miles a year, financing a truck, paying retail price at the fuel pump, all spot, right? So not all drivers are all spot, but if you're completely exposed to the spot market and you're paying retail, 100,000 miles loaded, 10,000 empty. This time last year, you were making 52 cents a mile gross profit. Today, you're losing 24. So your profit. So this is the worst.
Oh my goodness!
So keep this in context. It gets better the bigger the fleet and the more buying power and the more volume discounts you get. So this is the worst case scenario for that new owner operator that's operating on load boards, primarily getting spot prices. So their profitability has gone down. Now, the caveat here is I'm still paying myself $70,000 a year. So what I'm going to do is forego my salary, drop my salary right back and run at a much lower rate per mile. So my operating cost today including a $70,000 salary, is 205. Actually, just check 211. So it's costing me 211 a mile to run a truck. It's probably more because a lot of carriers don't factor in a return on capital employed. By that I mean how much per mile are you getting for the equity in the truck? If it was sitting in the bank account, what should it be earning? A lot of guys don't factor that into their rate per mile. So I don't include that in there. So I think it's actually more. So my operating costs have gone up from 156 to 211 in the last year.
And rates have dropped.
Yes, so spot rates are down around break even for a small guy. And if you're negotiating with someone to move freight, they're already hurting and they're already at break even. And that's where you're going to find that I think capacity starts to bleed off. Yeah, anecdotally, I know guys are just saying, to heck with it. I'm just going to park my truck and trailer. I'll go and drive a combine harvester.
Well, I have a good friend owns a fairly large asset-based carrier and trucking company.
Right.
And last year, was it last year or 2020? I forget. I think it was 2020. No, 2019. He actually parked 10 or 15 trucks, brokered that freight out, and made 3 times as much as if he would have ran his trucks. And he says, Dan, it's not my outbound. Like, my outbound customers are awesome. I go pick it up with my local trucks, bring it to my dock. I transfer it to other carriers so they come to my dock, so I control the pickup, so the customers are still satisfied. And he says, it's the backhauls. It's coming out of the US to Canada. They are robbing people blind. Like we talked about it on the show a couple of times now. I mean, you're talking Toronto, Montreal. So one of the largest lanes in Canada is Toronto, Montreal. And at one point it was like $1,300, $1,250, $1,100, depending on who you are and kind of what you're looking at. It went down like at one point in 2019, brokers were offering $350. Like you're taking 75% of that number away. And they're saying, well, I got 7 lines going. Do you want it or not? And it's like, and at that point, you're actually, I mean, people were taking it because they're like, well, it pays for my fuel. So at least I don't lose everything repositioning my equipment either to Ontario or Quebec. But it was like, and when he was telling me, we parked all these trucks, we furloughed the drivers. He goes, hopefully we'll get them back, but maybe they went and worked somewhere else. But he goes, Dan, it's crazy. Like we are getting numbers at half of our cost to run a truck. He goes, so I would lose half the rate on the round trip. He goes, not worth it. Not worth it. If you're I'm better to park it and just pay the lease and the finance on it, or the finance on it and the insurance.
A lot of guys are going to say, if I'm going to go broke, I'll do it sitting at home.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
we've seen this before though, but also, I mean, Jeff nailed it on the head. I think that's exactly it is the perfect recipe for disaster.
So we're in this perilous market right now. And remember, intermodal volumes are down about 8% year to date. So the intermodal networks aren't adding sufficient capacity to handle more volume. That's assuming there's more volume to handle. Like I'm not sure on what this week's data shows, but typically, the intermodal moves a fairly big chunk of long haul freight, and they're suffering because they can't get engineers back. They furloughed a lot of engineers in April and May. They're having a real hard time. When you listen to the earnings calls of the Class 1 railroads, they say our biggest issues are getting labor engineers back to run our trains. So they are having real problems trying to pick up the slack. And I think what's going to happen is you've got to watch these port markets very carefully, because you can fast forward in your brain right now to Christmas holiday shopping, fall season shopping, summer sales, right? That's where I mentioned air freight. You know what's coming, because if this freight, if your customers are ordering this freight now out of Asia and it's not moving, I can't imagine what's going to happen to the spot market later in the year, or truckload capacity and trying to move freight. But if we drive the market down, right, and spot rates keep plummeting, and and margins keep getting expanded on the intermediary side, eventually some of that capacity just vanishes.
Yeah.
Or the drivers go back to working for a large carrier with their truck, or they just go and drive for a large carrier and park their own truck and trailer.
Or just decide to get out and go do something else completely because they're sick of the back and forth.
Yeah, and this is a long freight cycle. Normally freight cycles are 16 to 18 months. We're probably 2 years into this freight cycle. When you go from start to finish, it's a long cycle, but it's turned quickly. It's turned in 2 months. it's turned, and it was already turning before Russia invaded the Ukraine, right? So the market was already turning, and diesel prices were already going up.
That just expedited it a little bit.
It just accelerated that change. So this shift is substantial. You can't ignore it, because I think in 6 months' time, you're going to be seeing the outcome of this, which again is the market could turn again just as quickly. You'll have tight capacity, and spot rates and contract rates will start to go up.
Skyrocket. Yeah.
But we're definitely at the peak of the cycle right now in terms of rates.
So we got some comments for everybody. I apologize that we haven't been getting to this. So John says, favorite time of the day with Dean? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Nerfad said it's a wild world in the LA area during the pandemic. I booked 8 loads of appliances that were floor loaded, and I was paying $8,000 plus from West Coast to East Coast. I thought it was a great rate. It's a big one. Sorry, guys. Then I booked drivers without stating it was floor loaded, because I didn't think it was a big deal at this rate. Not one driver loaded. They all left after showing up on site for pickup. They took palletized freight instead and told me to take a hike. Lesson learned, my bad. I am sure though. Sorry guys. I'm sure that right now they would take floor loaded or machine blown freight in their dry van, considering how bad rates are and how badly they have dropped while fuel continues to climb like crazy. Yeah.
That's the internal battle we keep having though in the industry.
Jay says it's going to be a cluster. I'm sure there's an FUCK after that, but he didn't want to write it. Worse than before. Maggie said it's the Newton's law of motion. Yes, sorry, that was what I was looking for. Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate that. I don't care what DJ says. You're awesome.
She is.
Just kidding. That was bad. I'm sorry. That was kind of like a GI. So logistics runs by Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Stop inviting Murphy to the party, brother.
Yeah, Murph, you're not allowed anymore.
It's all about greed, Dan, which is part of the ongoing issues we're facing.
Nailed it, Jeff.
Absolutely. Jeff says, wow. And then Jeff says, recipe for disaster. And then Jeff says, we're looking at 78 days longer on sailings out of Shanghai. That brings us to late August, beginning of September. Interesting.
This is normally a 21-day transit, right, across the ocean. This is incredible.
Wow.
So only 35 vessels banked up today. That's why you're going to see more volumes. East Coast volumes are down compared to West Coast. East Coast volumes are up. West Coast volumes are down year over year as of April's data. So you're going to see this shift from east to west is going to continue, I think, throughout the year. I think this is an important one for folks to watch. There's definitely a shift. But of course, the wild card, the contract labour negotiations with the 29 ports and 22,000 workers on the West Coast began on last Friday. It's due to conclude in, I think, early July. So this tidal wave of containers is going to be arriving when contract labour negotiations are underway. This is so we're going to see, and I think this is why some shippers are already looking to move there to de-risk from the West Coast ports. So that's part of the reason we're seeing.
That's why they're going to Texas and stuff.
Yeah, we're seeing more volumes in Gulfport, Mobile, Tampa. So if you're looking, and this is a thing for truckload carriers, if you're not running those lanes, you don't have contract rates in place, it's going to go to the spot market. So that's where I think we're going to see a continuation of the same 18-month trend, and that is more volume hitting more ports as some of these smaller vessels keep bringing in smaller volumes, but they can get into these ports, and we're seeing more truckload volume. Even up where I live in New England, we're seeing some big container ships come into really small ports, because obviously they can get in because of the depth of the draft they can pull, but we're seeing more volumes in places you wouldn't normally think, and that to me is a trend that'll continue.
So DJ, for everyone out there, and then we're going to get to Kyle's comment, because Kyle's running live data here with us as well, with him and Nerf, so that's very interesting. But for all the intermediaries out there, for all of you brokers out there, what Dean just said is something that you really should pay attention to. So Texas, Mobile, Tampa, all of these areas, if you're running freight out of these areas, whether it's near port or even 100 miles from port, just understand when these waves start hitting, your costs are going to change. Now is the time to have the conversation with your team members, with your asset suppliers, with your everyone, your partners, and talk to them about it. Share the data with them. Tell them what's happening. Establish a rate where they can make a profit. Dean, you've said it many times. leave something in it for the next guy.
Yeah, right.
And that is so important. If you're an intermediary and you're like stripping all of the money out, don't be surprised when you lose access to quality people to move that freight. Because here's the thing, you do not move the freight. Your reputation sits solely on the people you hire. And if you have to go down into a C, D, and E class supplier because you made too much profit and knocked out the A class supplier, that's on you. It really is.
Is it fair to say collaboration is no longer the future, but collaboration is needed for survival?
Yeah, it's mandatory. Mandatory. Like, forget about the fact that when you collaborate, you have less. Yes, forget about the fact that when you collaborate, you have less expenses because things are more dedicated. It's more streamlined. You don't have to spend more time on the spot market. Forget about all that. Right. If you're not collaborating now, like think about this, right, DJ? You look at just that wave in LA. Yep. Right. Look at the waves across the board. How can you, as the professional salesperson, keep your customers' heads above water, keep them ahead of the change curve, if all you're doing is playing a market and riding the wave? Like you're not doing anything. It's like taking a fishing boat into the Arctic and expecting it to cut through the ice. It's not going to happen. You're gonna bottom and you're gonna sink. But this is the biggest issue with brokers. And everyone out there, I've been a broker for 28 years. I know what I'm talking about. When you do not create the partnerships, and I'm not talking about, I need partnerships just because all of a sudden trucks are scarce. I'm talking from day one, no matter what, even when rates like Dean said,
even when the rates are so low, you can put it on the spot market and find any truck you want. You got your phone blown up off the hook. It does not fucking matter.
It doesn't
build the relationships.
You're only, from a carrier's perspective, your reputation, you're only as good as the last load that went south. I don't mean directionally. I mean,
and it's vice versa too, Dean. In the broker market, your carrier is only as good as the last load.
Exactly.
And we've talked about it a million times. You book a load and you're going, I don't know, shit. Okay. And all night you lie in bed going, oh my God, are they going to call me tomorrow? Are they going to deliver? This is so
important. You want to call them back. You want to pull oh my gosh, I did the wrong thing. No. Canceled. They canceled.
Like a driver of mine called me one night and he said, Dean, I can't see out of my left-hand mirror. I said, what's up, dude? He said, the truck's laying on it. I said, oh.
He rolled it.
A true story.
So he says he just calls in and says, I can't see on my left side mirror. Like, what a way to start the conversation.
Well, that was worse when a driver took a combine harvester 4.9 meters under a 4.3 meter bridge in Sydney. And he called me and he said, Dean, the combine bounced up into the bridge. Like, he turned the combine into a convertible. And I said, do you think it'll be okay? Will the dealer be able to fix it? And he said, yeah, I think it'll buff out. And I said, okay. And about half an hour later, I called him and I said, did you hit the Cumberland Highway rail bridge? And he said, yeah. I said, get back to the yard right now. So we had to wear a $500,000 loss. But so the service suffers. My point is, service suffers when you don't have the best equipment and the best drivers and the best people around you. Like,
did he really say it'll buff out?
Well, we used to have that discussion a lot when we'd put a chain across a bit of metal on a big broadacre farm tractor. Which, the dealers would have a paint shop and they'd fix it. So we'd always say to the driver, do you think it'll buff out? The drivers, of course, they've got no idea. They're banging stuff all day.
So you don't know when you hit a bridge if it'll buff out or not?
But the bizarre thing, Dan, DJ, he hit a bridge with an escort vehicle front and back at 4 a.m. Like, it's like a double cry. What are you thinking?
Oh my God. It just reminded me of, you guys ever seen Bill Engvall where he goes, so in Blue Collar Comedy Tour, he goes, I'm driving down the highway, y'all, and I see a tractor trailer, and the guy's got his trailer jammed right up underneath the bridge. And he goes, and I get out, make sure the guy's okay. And he goes, and I see the state trooper pull up, and I get out of the car, and I saw the look on his face. And he goes, and I goes, he's not gonna. And the state trooper walks in and goes, get your truck stuck? And the guy goes, no, I was delivering the bridge, and I ran out of gas.
At least you can let the air out of the tires and get out of that one.
Oh my God,
that is hilarious. Okay, sorry. So Kyle says, interesting. I moved floor loaded loads out of California too. One guy demanded $10K for the extra for the load. My crazy shipper agreed to $5K. Driver refused. He did a fool. He did a fool and his money get together. Oh, they didn't.
Yeah.
So Nerf says, Kyle Graves, yes, it was a wild time for Cheryl. And my question to the driver was, what rate can you run so I don't have to tell my customer this bad news? And they simply said, just no floor loaded freight. They don't even try to get money with it. Interesting. Don't forget about the factories that are in shutdown and around Shanghai. They just can't ramp up overnight. So to put the data into equation, it's going to bring us right into peak season. So proactively looking at the what ifs now. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I know. That was the funniest thing ever, Dean. That's hilarious. You know what? We should do a war story day. Just like the top story. You know what?
Great.
Let's do that.
Yes.
It'd be like the outtakes from Outback Trucker.
Yeah.
The stuff that didn't make
all the stuff that didn't make the reel. But yeah. Lisa says, are we contributing to the problem if we focus on the spot market and the spot market continues to drop? 100%.
Exactly.
So Lisa, contributing to the problem is anytime we try and knock rates down, because again, it's great that as a broker you make money, but if the brokers that make money are putting the people out that do the work, it's a cyclical cycle and it'll just keep going back and forth. So what'll happen is rates will drop. We'll have another 2019 where so many carriers go out of the business or they get bought by bigger fleets. Then all of a sudden capacity will drop, rates will climb back up. People will buy back into the market. Then they'll drop back. It's just going to keep going.
Well, it's the whole idea of the stock market. And if you think of it like that, I mean, it's the bulls and it's the bear, and it's, who's driving it up, who's driving it down. And we're doing the same thing on one side or the other, but we can't. When we see the downward force as a broker, we got to stop. Stop.
Yeah. And I think two analogies support that, DJ. If I could just take a minute, for folks that are new into the intermediary space, a contract and spot. So right now there's more moving on contract than spot. It's typically a 90-10 split. It was as high as 75-25 in the last year, 75 contract, 25% spot because of all the LTL part loads urgency. That's changed. But think about contextually, contract rates are like the climate. Spot rates are like the weather, right? So the climate is the long-term rate for the market. The spot rate is today's weather. What's it going to cost me to move a load today? And I think the other analogy that Professor Chris Kaplis always uses is think about the contract freight market as like the water in a bathtub. It's the temperature of the water in a bathtub. Well, what's coming out of the tap is the spot rate. The temperature of what's coming into the market is sort of, that's how you think about this. So I think the weather analogy really helps me understand that the weather today, spot market is cooling off dramatically, but we've just seen it being very hot for the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, that's such a great point. Good morning, Gary. We haven't seen Gary in forever.
He must be on Mountain Time.
Yeah, it's okay.
He's showing up right at the end, but that's okay. That's okay. So DJ, so we never actually got to the Canadian spot market. but you know what? Maybe we'll get together and you know what I'll do, guys, is I'll throw out a couple of posts from some of the data that Dean shared. Canadian spot market.
It's an important point, Dan, because it looks like there's a little bit of a turn in the market after the blockades in February. We can probably hit on it next week because there's some lanes there that are worth watching.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. I know we're I do want to also hit on interpreting the data and taking the data and where we get data and how we get it. And I want to bring Jeff on for that show as well. So we'll have to plan that as well. But DJ, I know this took a quite a big.
Oh, this is so fun! Today, it's okay. It's so fun.
Let's see how you panned out here, bro.
We'll see. We'll see how this works. It might work, but anyway. So, guys, 30 minutes is still too short for. I agree. I think.
Are we going to be doing that? Are we going to go to an hour for data day?
If you want.
Dean, it's up to Dean.
Dean, are you good if maybe next week we start doing or schedule an hour, and if we go 45 or 50, whatever, and then we can get to everything?
I'm happy to sit here and riff all day. I got a ton of stories we could talk about.
Oh, so then, let's do that. Let's schedule a minimum of an hour. I'll start blocking out up until 10:30 or 11, and then that way we can just riff all morning. I'm into that. Okay, so you got it.
Love
Richard,
it.
Thank you for bringing that
guys.
up.
You heard it. You heard it right now. Yeah. Richard, Jeff, who said it? Richard, you just made it happen. Now 45 minutes to an hour or an hour. So,
So
again, thank you guys.
Before we end
Go
here,
ahead.
Lisa's got a question. Agreed. So what are some of the top ways we can help to avoid contributing to the problem?
Right.
That's a great question. Who wants to go
That is a great
first?
question.
Communication, right? So remember, I think from a broker's point of view, carriers don't think transactionally. You do. You're thinking move one load. I need to move this load. A carrier's thinking 5 moves ahead. They're playing chess. They're trying to figure out how do I get home Saturday. So the rate per mile discussion today is very much contingent upon lead time, dock time, what market you're sending me to, and what's that market like. So widen your aperture is how I would describe this. Think about how do I get the carrier to his next market and out of his next market and then into another market. So remember, carriers think they're playing chess all the time. I don't know what the analogy is if you're not playing chess, but maybe it's checkers. I don't know. So think about
Jenga. You don't know your next move until you make the first one, maybe instead of chess, right? Yeah.
I'll work on that.
And Jenga is very unstable. Spot market. Get it? Actually, those are pretty good analogies. I like that.
But the answer to Lisa's question is think multi-stage moves. Like a carrier is always thinking that the discussion you have with a carrier will go much easier if you're talking to them about how they get home Saturday and how you get there. Right.
Well, I think the big key too is just focus on relationships and less on rates. You know, get your shippers, get your clients to quit worrying about, oh, the spot market's coming down, or oh, this is going down, let's jump on that. No, you know, find a rate that's okay for everybody. Everybody wins.
And I think both those conversations are combined. So, you know, DJ's talking about relationship, Dean's talking about the conversation and having the conversation. Like, this is the lane that my customer's moving. Here's the volume. How does that fit into your network? What does it do? What are the benefits for it? What can we do? Here's what, and again, we go back to driver-centric sales. Here's the amenities for your drivers here. Here's what we could do. Here's their schedule. Does it meet what you need in your triangle? Like, all carriers do a triangle. Right? They go load, destination, right? And it's always a triangle. Right. And if our customers fit into that triangle, and I will say it again, because I continuously say it, cost plus models are the models where you talk to your supplier and your team, your carrier, your asset, your partner. I'm putting 12% on it. I'm doing a cost plus, meaning I am sending your invoice to my customer at 12%. There's your transparency. Cost plus on the customer side, there's your transparency. You're the intermediary, you're the one in the middle, but you know what? You provide the value. And here's the big thing with brokers, right? Carriers cannot provide the value a broker provides, because what we do is we concentrate on the value in the middle. Mm-hmm. A carrier needs to concentrate on that driver, the A, B, C, D, and everything else in between. They can't send the emails 9 times a day. They can't do the proposals and the presentations for on-time delivery and all this kind of stuff. It's just I shouldn't say they can't. Most carriers are not equipped to do that type of presentation or that type of customer service, which is where you come in. Yeah. But like Dean said, thinking a couple of steps ahead, ask them what the couple of steps aheads are. Ask them what the variance is. What is their cost per mile? Okay, you're at $210 per mile, including fuel, or $250 per mile, including fuel. Okay, now you have a baseline to go to your customer with, and you go to your customer and say, what we want to do is the dedication we want to provide you, even if it's a load or two a week. This is who we want to do. The cost is $250 mile plus 12%. Yep. I'll give you the invoice from the carrier with the POD. Everybody's happy. And that transparency is going to take you a hell of a lot further than anything else.
Yes. Amen.
Amen to that.
Amen. Transparency is key, guys. But thank you, guys. Again, thank you, everybody, for all of the comments. And you guys are
Richard's got it right. Jenga, one wrong move and game over.
That's right.
It's a scary analogy, but that's really what it is.
It really is.
Right? I mean, how many times have we got
pull from that one area that you know is already weak? That's the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. 100%. All right, what do we got? Great show, guys. Right. Jeff says, have a great week. Dean, see you next week.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes. Hey, thank you, guys. Again, seriously, thank you, everybody, for making this so much fun. And Dean, seriously, can't thank you enough. Guys, if you're not catching Dean on his show on Dat, you got to follow him on Dat too. He has a show there as well, and his show is so
every Tuesday.
And he gives us shouts out. So thank you for always just
Anytime.
shouting us out on their team.
Part of the team.
And then thank you everybody for joining us weekly, daily. If you're catching the replay, whenever you're catching us, thank you to Daman and American Logistics Centurion Trucking. Thank you to Preet. She came in right at the time that I was about to say. Thank you, Preet, for just being you as well. But and again, just thank you everybody for all that you bring to this show and make this so much fun. So to take us out, it is a Jeffrey Moore. Jeffrey Moore, and it is without
like James
data.
Bond, Jeff Moore.
I don't know.
Was he Jeffrey Moore?
It's
Who's
with
the Moore?
It's with a G. It's with a G. I don't know. Jeffrey.
Was there a Jeffrey Moore that was a James Bond, or was
so.
it, what was his name? No, there was a Moore, right?
Yes.
Moore that was.
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore. Never mind. It wasn't Jeffrey. Wrong
Same.
alphabet.
That's
Totally.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Moore, not Roger
It'll
Moore,
buff out. Don't worry.
but Jeffrey Moore. Without data, you are blind and deaf, and in the middle of the freeway.
Pardon?
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversation.